Do not buy 12 Tribes on Earth hair growth oil and hair magic elixir unless you want super healthy, gorgeous hair that grows. They have a whole line of amazing hair growth products, including hair growth leave-in conditioner spray, hair growth shampoo, hair growth spray, and hair growth butter. I'm starting to sense a theme here. They include quality natural ingredients. They smell amazing, and you can see the results for yourself. So if you're looking for healthy hair growth for your natural or relaxed hair, try 12 Tribes on Earth today.
Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Woo, I tell you what, I was looking at the live feed of the war. Oh man, Iran brought it to Israel. You hear me? They hit Tel Aviv and Haifa, and they brought down a barrage of missiles. I mean, they kicked their ass. I'm like, oh shoot. I guess they thought with their supreme leader gone, they wouldn't have much fight. They got a lot of fight in them. Oh man. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I got some videos that I'm going to show you, and this time around about the birth rate, you're going to see a lot more white men talking about it and their perspective. And as you can see, they really can't turn this thing around, y'all. They really can't. It really, truly is too far gone. And it's worldwide. It doesn't matter what they try to do at this point. It can't be turned around. It really can't. And it will not work if your women are not willing participants, and many of them don't seem to be willing participants in having children. And the men, yeah, they're frustrated. So they're blaming them, blaming feminism and all kinds of stuff. But like I said, it wouldn't have been this way if America would have just promoted family, marriage, and the things that would have gotten the place booming, maybe among all groups, but their group would not be lagging behind. But now you want to change laws and not to mention it was always white women that got the most A words up in here. They used to at one point in time tried to put it on us, but it was never us. It was always them. It was always them. So let's get to it. I want y'all to hear what they have to say. They're not happy campers, but hey, this is what you should be focusing on and not us. All right. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you. Thank you.
White people, like every country in Europe, can't sustain its population. Each year, it's going down. Like no country's having more than 2 kids per couple. Like, do you think someone's like pushing that on purpose?
No, not at all. I think it's just the values and the social economic standards have changed. So, like back in the day, you would have as many kids as you can, make them work the farm, have them help out in whatever local business that you're running or something like that. Now it's not the case. You get 1 or 2 kids, you spoil them rotten, you raise them as best you can, and then you shove them off into the world.
You're doing great.
I wouldn't say that anybody's pushing it. I don't have any kids myself, so I have no idea. No one's pushing me to have kids besides my mom. She wants grandkids or stuff like that. But other than that, no idea.
So do you think that's a problem that the population went down 23% in the last?
Nah, I mean, it's just how the world works, China's population exploded because they had economic growth. The same thing happened to India. And, the white population probably, economically, they grew, but population wise they shrank because now you don't need 5 kids to be farmers.
Europe is running out of people, not in the future, not in theory, right now. A chilling chart from the Financial Times reveals something no one is ready to talk about. The birth rates in Europe's biggest economies are in free fall. France, Germany, Italy, all plunging below the critical replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. By 2020, that number hovered around 1.5, and it's not bouncing back. What does that mean? It means fewer children, fewer workers, fewer taxpayers. Entire economies aging faster than they can reproduce. And no, this isn't some sci-fi collapse scenario. It's already underway. But here's the twist. It's not just biology. It's not that people can't have kids. It's that more and more people are choosing not to. Why? Because in today's Europe, starting a family feels like a financial death sentence. Skyrocketing rent, outrageous childcare costs, no space, no support. The price of diapers might as well be gold. And then there's the cultural shift. People are delaying marriage or avoiding it entirely. Career first, stability second. Kids, maybe never. Add in a generation crippled by climate anxiety, wondering if it's even ethical to bring a child into a world on fire. And you have a recipe for demographic collapse. But here's what no one wants to say out loud. This is not just a European issue. This is the future of the West, especially white European nations. America isn't far behind. Japan, already there. South Korea, even worse. We're looking at the slow-motion disappearance of entire populations. Nations that once ruled the world now struggling to simply replace themselves. Meanwhile, the global picture paints a very different story. According to the UN, the world population will keep growing, but only because of developing regions, particularly Africa and the Middle East. These areas still have higher fertility rates and their populations are surging. So what happens when rich developed countries shrink and poorer younger nations rise? The balance of global power shifts economically, culturally, politically. Europe may be aging itself out of relevance, and yet, here's where the conversation gets really uncomfortable. Some argue this is a good thing, that fewer people mean less pollution, less strain on the planet, a more sustainable world. But others warn this is a civilizational crisis. A world without enough youth becomes stagnant. Innovation slows. Care systems collapse. Societies built on growth start crumbling when growth ends. So now we're at a crossroads. Do we fight this trend with aggressive family subsidies, free childcare, and housing reforms? Or do we let it happen and accept the end of an era? Is this decline nature's reset or our collective failure? Should governments be doing more to reverse the trend or stay out of the bedroom? And here's the hardest question of all. If people simply don't want children anymore, what does that say about us? This isn't just a population problem, it's a values problem. It's an identity crisis. Drop a comment below.
Let's move on now to other stories. The American Census Bureau has released the demographic data showing how the U.S. has changed over the past decade. It is the most detailed account of the demographic changes in the country since the year 2010. U.S. Census data release shows that the United States is an increasingly diverse country, as there have been significant increases in the number of people who identify as multiracial, Hispanic, and Asian. These categories have driven much of the population growth between 2010 and 2020. The multiracial population has changed considerably since 2010. It was measured at 9 million people in 2010 and is now 33.8 million people in 2020, which is a 276% increase. The Hispanic or Latino population, which includes people of any race, was 62.1 million in 2020. The Hispanic or Latino population grew 23%, while the population that was not of Hispanic or Latino origin grew 4.3% since 2020. The white population remains the largest race of ethnicity group in the United States, with 204.3 million people identifying as white alone. But its share of the overall population is declining. The white alone population decreased by 8.6% since 2010. The U.S. is now 57.8% white. 18.7% Hispanic, 12.4% Black, and 6% Asian. The data also offered new details of the country's slowing rate of population growth. The population growth is lower than it has been at any time aside from the 1930s, and more than half of all U.S. counties lost population from 2010 to 2020. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, and Phoenix remain the 5 largest U.S. cities. Phoenix, which grew faster than any other city in the top 10, surpassed Philadelphia. The fastest growing cities across the U.S. are now in suburban areas. The data release arrives months later than originally expected, as the census took longer to complete due to the pandemic. The delay has forced some states to go to court to postpone their redistricting. States use the data to redraw district lines for the U.S. House of Representatives after each decennial census. Now, the data will shape how $1.5 trillion in federal spending will be distributed to each state and local area. It will also be used by the state demographers to redraw political maps across an increasingly diverse country ahead, of course, of the 2022 midterm election. Our correspondent Susan Tehrani has more details on the U.S. Census Bureau report in this next ground report.
For individuals under the age of 18 remained quite diverse. Susan Tehrani from New York for We Are World is One.
There are a lot of people who are panicking about the current birth rates, but what if it's not a crisis? What if it's actually a correction and a choice for greater life? Instead of considering that women are dropping out of motherhood, what if in fact they are shifting into full human agency? Self-worth over sacrifice. Life satisfaction first, because I personally believe that will create healthier family dynamics rather than living a lie. And conscious planning instead of default parenting. Maybe family isn't shrinking, but the meaning is expanding. Personally, really dislike it when older generations try to put down younger generations. So I'm here to support the younger generations of women who are making different choices, and I'm trusting what they're doing. Because when you make a sacred choice to have children, you need structural support. When the world finally offers support, unlike what we're witnessing right now, freedom to choose a family becomes deeply meaningful. For example, better maternity and paternity systems. How about economic stability? That's really important for a family. Mental health resources that start at a very young age, and real work-life balance, which global corporations seem to have absolutely no concept of. I'm here to support women to live full, joy-filled lives. I mean, working 40 hours as a woman, coming home and picking up the second shift where it is expected that you are supposed to be the house manager and the child caretaker without any support from your partner is an outdated system. Let's redefine the story, the narrative that women are leaving motherhood. I believe that I'm witnessing a generation of women that are demanding better lives, freedom, dignity, purpose, choice, legacy, well-being. The old paradigm still values quantity over quality. So I hope that people at the Heritage Foundation hear my perspective, because they're the ones that came out about the decline of marriage and birth rates as being a national problem. And I'm here to say it is the first step to healthier families, because no policy gives you that sense of internal stability. Instability affects every decision that you will make, including whether you choose to build a family or not. The future of family won't be built through pressure, be built through stability. If you've been living in survival mode, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's where I guide you on a method to fix it inside my stability blueprint. If you're interested in checking it out, it's the link in my bio.
I found myself really shook the last 2 days. There's been a new realization that's hit me really hard. It's funny, isn't it, this journey of awakening, where we are waking up to the fact that everything we've ever been told is a lie. You know, I feel like I've accepted that for a long time. I've even got my head around unfathomable things like the satanic rituals that our elite do with children. The fact that they're probably not even human, these elites. Yeah, I feel like I've accepted it all and taken it in my stride. And I've been aware for a very long time that there's a systematic destruction of the West so they can bring in communism and enslavement. But I hadn't realised, and I hadn't woken up to the truth, that there is a white genocide going on. I didn't realise how bad it was. I didn't realise how much they were coming after the white race, and I've already destroyed most of it. It was when I heard the following stat. Over the last 100 years, the percentage of white people out of the worldwide population has gone from 30% to 7%. That is truly shocking and can only be by design. And as that tweet says, it doesn't matter whether it's left or right who's in charge. It's all one party. Here's a graph of the US national debt over the last, I can't remember, 100 years, is it? Yeah, you can see that it doesn't make any difference who's in charge. They are screwing the country no matter what. We're now at a point where there isn't enough money in the world to pay back the debt. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true if you listen to actual economics or actually understand this stuff. Because we all know that it's the small hats that own the bank. And if the country's over banks all that money, then it's the small hats that are in control. But we'll get into them more shortly. Okay, no matter how bad it gets, I'm just so glad that we won World War II. Thank goodness that Austrian painter. Oh, hang on a minute. The Austrian painter gave German couples interest-free mortgages. He slashed 25% of mortgages balances for each child born. This is how you fix declining birth rates, but instead our government imports millions of third world savages, gives them free housing, healthcare and benefits while taxing the white man to death, making it impossible for him to start a family. It's interesting, isn't it? The more you hear about that Austrian painter, you have to wonder, was he onto something? Especially when you know that it's the banks and
You notice how he blames everybody but himself, but his people. It's everybody's fault, but not their fault. But actually, it is their fault. Their decline is their fault. Okay? Y'all promoted feminism. Y'all did not promote family. You promoted careers. You promoted, everything except for the things that really should have counted. How are you going to be fruitful and multiply and you're promoting feminism? All right. How are you fruitful and multiplying and your women were the biggest ones running around getting the A word? How are you going to be fruitful and multiply? And you are always talking about capitalism and making money. And again, you neglect to promote the family. So when you say, oh, this is a genocide against you and this is happening and that's happening, but you don't want to look within where the problem really truly is. No wonder why you're dwindling and you're going to continue to dwindle if you don't see yourself as the problem. But hey, it is what it is.
corporations, but basically the banks, which are run by the small hats that control everything. And a particular party tried to take over the Rothschild Bank. It's officially announced last night that create a homogenous, safe state where everyone was economically viable and take out the deep state, which is a small hat.
So I just saw this video where the guy was saying the birth rate of white people in Minneapolis is going to be 20 to 30% in the next 10 years, right? And he went on to say birth erasure and birth replacement and started blaming the immigrants because of the low birth rates in the white community. Why are you blaming the immigrants? The immigrants didn't come and tell you to push this mass wave of feminism, radicalized feminism in your community to make your own white women want to stop having babies with you. The immigrants didn't tell you to stop having babies in the first place. The immigrants didn't go to the white women and tell them, hey, you shouldn't be having babies. That is a you problem, all right? White women are not wanting to have babies with white men, and some white women are not wanting to have babies with white women. Why are you blaming the immigrants? Why are you blaming black people? Because black people have babies, no problem. Spanish people have babies, no problem. Arabs, Indians, Asians, Hispanics. Stop blaming immigrants for you problems.
So I'm about to start reading the Heritage Foundation report that came out on January 8th. So Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years. And like they got 3 key takeaways. But the second one I think is pretty important because the first one just has to do with gay marriage, whatever. The question that will determine the course of America's future is what happens when to a nation when its citizens largely stop having children and eschew marriage. And so one of the main things that they're talking about is that in order for a population to replace itself and to be stable so that the youth are always paying to help support the seniors and the seniors take advantage of the support they gave the previous generation of seniors, you need to have 2.1 children, I think, per woman. Right now in America, it's 1.6. Immigration was helping that because immigrants have more children, especially because people in America are being crushed by how unaffordable this country is. Our president was voted in based off affordability. He has called it a hoax, and he says that it doesn't matter. There are certain policies that are being thought of that do not help with anything when it comes to lessening the actual cost, because that's the problem. It's too expensive to care for a child and provide them a quality life. So people will put it off because you've instilled in generations, don't have kids unless you can provide for them. But it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to care for these kids. And the more education that you receive, right, the less children I think you will have on average, right? And so this is a thing that is happening. Maybe this is why they're going against education. They figure if we're all done, we'll just have like spit out like 50 million kids. But like, I do understand why they put it out like this, because they're trying to get their donations, but it's also just their dogma. They're stuck in it. They have no other considerations. The point is that they love talking about children, but we know that when it comes to the Heritage Foundation, they're just talking about white kids, right? They just want white kids to, they want to have more white kids. But the main problem is affordability and jobs. But everything that the current administration is doing is going to increase the likelihood that things are going to get more expensive. Like literally, Donald Trump wants to devalue the dollar to bring back manufacturing to the United States. The problem with that is in the meantime, you're going to make things even more expensive, right? Because it's going to cheapen our exports, but it's going to cost more money to bring stuff in. So it's like a double-edged sword to trying to devalue the dollar, right? Other thing is we have tariffs on everything, right? College is more expensive on everything. Instead of trying to address the fact that college is expensive, right? And school's expensive, they basically just tried to shut down a bunch of places because they tried to have diverse environments. But the thing is that in order for a population to replace itself, you need 2.1 children per, couple, right? And I think America's at 1.6. A lot of countries are a lot lower. Like the more developed countries have a significant problem when it comes to the amount of children that are being born when it comes to the fertility rate. Some countries are low as 1.1, which means your population is going to steady decline. I was reading a little bit about like China, and I think like they have like 5 point something kids born per 1,000 people, but they have 8 individuals dying per 1,000 people. That population is declining. We're going to end up going in the same way if things are not made cheaper and easier for people to have families. Like they want to go back to the era of the baby boomers, right? When white people were just having all these babies. But that's because the government subsidized education, they subsidized housing, they made it easy to have a job, and things were cheap because we're an industrial nation, right? None of those are a priority of the Heritage Foundation or the Trump administration, because if they did, if they really felt that, they would not have actually elected Donald Trump, right? It demonstrates that they don't actually think about what they're doing. They just wanted someone to be very dogmatic in the choices that they made. We'll see how this goes.
I remember being in graduate school when I first learned that by 2050, white people were going to be the minority in the United States. And I remember that my first initial reaction to learning this was, well, that's not good. Not because it's not okay for white people to be the minority. My response was strictly based around my fear about what white men who wanted to uphold white supremacy and the patriarchy, what they would do in order to make sure that that didn't happen. Because there's no one as dangerous in the world than a white man who is on a mission to uphold the system that gives him power over others. In my last video, I talked about white supremacy and the patriarchy and white women's roles within that system. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. In this video, I'm going to continue the focus on white supremacy and the patriarchy, but we're also going to be talking about the declining birth rates amongst white women. For centuries in the United States, white male dominance has been held through a very tight system. Control of land, control of labor, control of law, control of women's bodies, and control over reproduction. Now, white women play a very specific role within this system, not as a white man's equal. Now, that does not mean a white woman does not have power through proximity, does not already have privilege of her own because of her skin color, but we are talking about the fact that a white woman does not have the equal status and power of a white man. Women in this system are really these stabilizers, right? They are the reproducers of the next generation. White women's role is really to help solidify the white man's power and to make sure that it continues to go on for generations and generations. Oh, when we're looking at the declining birth rates of white children in the United States, when we're looking at the decline in white women being willing to get married, when we're looking at the way that white women are pushing off having kids, they're very career focused. They're more concerned about making sure that if they were to be on their own, could they float themselves? Could they sustain themselves economically, right? Our focus has really shifted from kind of just being only reproducers and upholding whatever our husbands wanted us to uphold and moving more towards an autonomous driven life. So white women not having children is a very big deal in the context of upholding white supremacy and the patriarchy. So we're going to talk about 4 different areas of that. Okay, 1, there's a fear around numbers. Whiteness has historically functioned around having power because we are the majority. When white people become the minority, there runs the risk of the assumption that laws, culture, the way that we do things will not be centered around whiteness and what benefits the white person. And the reason why this feels so threatening for white people, especially white men, is because for a lot of them, equality has never been the goal, right? They want to uphold their status and their power, and they do that through numbers. The second is reproduction. And I've touched on this a little bit already. When white women are not reproducing, that's a huge issue for the white supremacy patriarchy, because we're not giving them the next generations of soldiers to uphold this harmful system. That's why you'll see a lot of what's going on right now is targeting women's reproductive rights, reproductive autonomy. And the media is really framing white women not having children as something negative, as something woke, as something that white women are just too liberated. We're becoming too autonomous. We're scandalous. We're unhappy because we're not falling into our traditional roles of being a subservient wife and mass producing babies. Controlling women's bodies overall has very much historically been a way to stabilize the hierarchy of power. Third, the protector narrative is failing. And I talked about this in my last video, but if you haven't seen it, the protector narrative that we need white men to be our protectors and our leaders, it's all collapsing. When white women are seeing domestic violence statistics, they're seeing marriage inequity, they're seeing the imbalance in the emotional labor, and they're seeing the political disregard for women's safety, the narrative that the white man is our protector and thus we should be compliant and subservient to him and we should put our heads in the sand in order to gain safety and protection through his proximity, right? That entire narrative is falling apart through this new lens of awareness, right? Through having internet access, TikTok, women are able to speak out, women are talking to each other about things like this. The average white woman is coming to realize that the narrative and the story she's been fed about a white man being her protector, or that white men are historically trying to do right by us, it's all false. To summarize, when women stop believing that male authority equals safety, then compliance from those same women starts to drop. And then number 4, and this is the part that a lot of people really don't like to talk about, especially people who are trying to facilitate the white supremacy patriarchal system. White women's alliance and allegiances are shifting. The shift is that women are waking up, and unfortunately, it does sometimes take things like the tragedy of Renee Good being murdered in order for some white women to take their head out of the sand and look around and realize that they have more in common with other groups of people than they ever did with the white man. So in summary, right, by 2050, white people will be the minority, and people who, and there's women included in this, right? In my last video, I talked about how some white women are evil and vile, and they relish in the power hierarchies, and they relish in the proximity to power and in harming and hurting others. They get off on it, and they don't want to relinquish their power and their privilege. And they will be the ones aiding other white supremacist males in trying to uphold the system that keeps them in power, keeps them in the top of the hierarchy. And these will be the people who will start to really go after the fact that white women are moving away from marriage, they're declining to have children, and they're really focusing on living a more autonomous life and self-sustainability, which threatens the entire system that the white man needs in order to stay on top.
Let's talk about how overturning Roe v. Wade has nothing to do with states' rights and everything to do with white women.
Welcome back to another day in white supremacy MAGA hell. And in MAGA hell, the most radical thing a white woman can do right now is to refuse to have children. Whether you accept this as truth or not, it doesn't really matter, but it is necessary. Your wombs have been taken over by your men. You don't have control over your own bodies. And you're essentially literally being used as incubators, specifically for white males. And they want you to breed white men with no empathy, okay? Understand what I'm saying to you. They want you to breed psychopaths so they can stay in power. And they've reduced your purpose as a woman and for girls to just be baby makers. Is that really the life that you want for yourself and for your daughters? Because your men don't have good character, you are literally producing demons into this reality, and we all have to suffer because of it. So if you really want to do something radical, stop having kids. And if you already have kids, raise them with empathy to the best of your ability. It is necessary that white children, especially white men, white male children, learn empathy and learn how to feel for others. Y'all take the cake on breeding the serial killers, the pedophiles, the monsters, the rapists. Okay, y'all take the cake on all of that. All right? White men commit those crimes in higher numbers than anybody else. This is not a debate. This is just facts. And those men are coming from your wombs. I need y'all to take accountability on this and understand. Okay? I need you to take your power back and you say what goes in and what comes out of your womb. And yes, it is that serious. Okay? Do not have any more children. And if you really want kids, adopt them. There are plenty of kids in the world. Adopt them. Don't adopt no black ones because y'all are not qualified to raise them. But go adopt white children and raise them. There are plenty of white kids in the system. But as far as having more children of your own, y'all need to cut that shit out. Y'all need to cut it out yesterday. All right? Again, the most radical thing a white woman can do right now is to stop having children.
But, you know, when you talk about the birth rates, you're 100% right that the birth rates are a problem. The white people are not having kids.
And I got a news flash for you. Why don't you call out why the birth rates are so negative?
Why?
Feminism, number one reason. Feminism to the extreme, the emasculation of men. The second major contributing factor, Hollywood, selling women these fantasies.
Keep going.
Number three, godlessness. That's actually number one, but godlessness. Rearranging the order that God gave to the earth. Period. Number five, you have too many brothels in Europe. It's cheaper to pay women to sleep with you than it is to have dinner in Germany. You have red light districts throughout all of Europe. Your men are tired because your women have become spoiled, self-entitled, emasculating men.
If the Cajuns of call weren't statistically getting abortions at higher rates than minorities, this wouldn't be an issue. But y'all ain't hear that from me.
You know what, y'all? When they give you these far out numbers, I want you to know they're just buying more time. Oh, we won't be the minority until 2060, until 2050. Nah, honey, you're already there. All right. They keep pushing the number far out because they think that's going to buy them more time at the top. And really, there are no more population explosions that are going to happen, y'all. We are in these final times, and a lot of it is very spiritual. You know, the Most High has put a spirit on them not to reproduce anymore. A lot of it is spiritual as well. So these things, yeah, I do believe feminism played a huge role in it because it was the white woman that took to the streets back in the 60s and 70s fighting her man, calling him a male chauvinist pig. And she didn't want to be home. She wanted to have a career. He wanted her home cooking the meals and having the babies. And that was a fight that spilled out into the streets, you know? And now you can't turn back that clock. If you talk to many of these women, all they gonna do is babble about their education, their careers, and oh, if they do have children, they're gonna postpone it. That's how they're talking now. And I think today I have seen more women not interested in marriage than I have in my lifetime. A lot of these women are not interested in marriage like they used to. I'm not saying they all not, but I mean, this is the most I've ever seen. But it really is a huge problem in the white population. These women will get on all kinds of videos telling you they have no husband and don't want one. They have no children and don't want they put it all out there for you to see and hear. So no, the genie is out of the bottle, white man. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. That's the problem. And y'all want to put the genie back in the bottle. And see, changing laws are only going to get you so far. You really got to have the cooperation of the women in order to even have an inkling of turning it around, and you don't have the cooperation of your women. They don't. So, they can change around all the laws they want. If the women are not cooperating and getting back in the homes to have these babies, it's all counterproductive, even changing the laws. But that's what they're attempting to do through the politics. That's what Roe v. Wade and all of these making it illegal to have the A word in this state and this state. But at the end of the day, y'all, these women already said, I was watching the videos. They said if they want to get one, they don't care if they got to cross state lines or go into a different country if they wanted to get an A word done. And they meant that mess. They meant that mess. So he got a major problem on his hands, and I don't believe he's going to be able to fix his problem. I think the white man is defeated when it comes down to the low birth rate. That's where I stand. I believe he is completely defeated, y'all. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. I got one more live at 5:45. I hope to see you there. And have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Shalom, family.